I didn't realize I was going to be the first speaker until a couple of days ago. And it's sort of a nice spot to have, actually. You sort of launch off the day. And it's interesting to listen to today what he was saying there about consistency. And he touched on a lot of things I'm going to be talking about today. I suppose you would expect that the first person up, I'm going to ask you all, this being America, I'm going to ask you all to stand up and do jumping jacks or something, right? But you're not, I'm Irish. So what I'm going to ask you to do is something quite different. So I want everybody to get nice and comfortable. Get relaxed, get comfortable in your seat. I want you to sit back, and I want you to close your eyes. I'm serious now. I'll be watching, I'll be checking. Okay, I want you to close your eyes, everybody get comfortable. And I want you to remember something. I want you to remember a leader, a great leader that you've known. It can be a he or a she, big or small, fat or thin, whatever you want. Just remember this person in your mind's eye. See them, physically see them in your mind's eye. And now I want you to ask yourself the question, what is it about them? What were the attributes that they had that you admired in them that caused you to consider them to be a great leader? Just think about them. Relax, sit back and think about the person. Again, see them in your mind's eye and say, what was it about them? Try and name them. Try and name 2 or 3 things. Identify a few things about them. Take your time. Okay, so keep your eyes closed. Now I want you to remember that inadequate leader that you worked with or you experienced in your life or your career. What were the attributes of that individual that led you to believe that they were in fact an inadequate leader? Can you see them in your mind's eye, physically see the person? Can you see the things they used to say or do? Can you identify them? Can you name them? Okay, here's my third question for you. I want to imagine that you are that great leader, not an inadequate leader. You are the great leader. And now I want you to list the things. What are the things that need to change for you to be that great leader? In your personal life, in your professional life, in all walks, what needs to change? We all know it, don't we? We all know what these things are. So keep your eyes closed. I'll give you the last question. I want you to just reflect for a moment and think, what is in your life right now? What's the one big challenge you're faced with? Personal, relationship, financial, work, health, whatever. The one big challenge you're faced with right now in life. Most of us typically have one big thing going on. And here's my question for you. What are you doing about it right now? At this moment in time, this day, this week, what are you doing about resolving that and fixing that? Okay, you can open your eyes. If your answer to the last question was that you're doing very little, relax, you're in good company. And it's an interesting question. If we look at what we aspire to be a great leader, and we are unable to deal with or address or face up to or change something that's really important, a big thing that's facing us right now, what chance do we have of changing, developing, and becoming that leader? Change is not easy. I would in fact go so far as to say that change is really hard. Like, it's really hard, don't kid yourself. Anybody who's trying to change will attest, it is hard. But it's doable. Many years ago, I was doing my MBA in a business school in France called ESSEC. And it was a joint program between ESSEC and Cornell University. And the dean who came over from Cornell to run the program, his name was Robert A. Beck, Bob Beck, known to everybody as Dean Beck, and a very, very famous man in Cornell, and a wonderful, wonderful man. But I wrote this paper on change, and put a lot of time and effort into it and submitted my paper, and a couple of days later, I got my paper back with a 0. He gave me a 0. And I got this paper and said, what's going on here? And I couldn't understand it. And I went up to the office and barged in and said, what's going on here? You're giving me a 0. And I argued my case. And he said, okay, fair enough. And he gave me 100. I told you he was a wonderful man. But he did say to me, but you're wrong. He said, you're wrong. The leopard doesn't change his spots. People don't change. And I have to say quite honestly, I disagree with him. Wonderful man though he was, I do disagree with him. So I do believe that we can change. And I do think that we can change significantly. In their book, The Complete Leader, Ron Price and Randy List, they talk about leadership. And I think one of the important arguments they make is that leadership is not really something you do, actually. I mean, it is, obviously, at some point in time, you're doing things. But it's really something you are. Leadership, and again, Dale, you talked about clear thinking. Leaders think clearly. They lead themselves and they lead others. And today, what I really want to focus on is this notion of change, this notion of leading yourself. And I think that, and they also talk about leaders being authentic, and I always think that the clear thinking, the authenticity, and leading yourself are sort of they're different facets of the same thing. And it's really what I want to talk about today. Now, this is going to be a pretty strange talk, guys. I need to sort of forewarn everybody. This may not be what you're expecting. So sit tight, buckle up, and we'll get going. There's 4 things I want to talk about, things to know. And I want to talk about 4 things to do. And this is based, I wrote a book that you mentioned, I think Nicole mentioned it, thank you very much, called The Dangerous Book for CEO. And it was an exercise in trying to get some ideas out of my head and onto paper. And I came up with the name because when I was a kid, my dad gave me a book called The Dangerous Book for Boys. And The Dangerous Book for Boys was how to build your campfire and how to make a bow and arrow and all these kind of great things. So it was things to know about nature and so on, and things to do. And I always liked the heading. It was a book that sort of resonated with me. And so I wrote this book. And the things I want to talk about today, these things to know, there's sort of 4 things I want to talk about. And the first thing I want to talk about is this notion of, can we change? Is it possible to change? Who's in charge? Who's in charge? Why is it so hard to change? Because it is. And how do we change? And then when I've talked about that a little bit, I will talk about things to do. Anybody recognize Pogo? Yeah, okay. So this is from a comic strip, and this one actually, we've met the enemy and he is us. This comes from 1971. This was Walt Kelly's strip, and it was published on Earth Day, and they really talk about the concept of taking responsibility of what we were doing to the planet. But it was really about taking responsibility. And he said, we've seen the enemy and he is us. Now, I love that expression. I've used it all my life because I had a chairman. I worked for an Irish-American guy called Charles F. Feeney, who actually died last Monday. And remarkable man, a huge impact on me in my life, both in terms of me as a person, but also me trying to develop as a leader. He gave away all his money while he was alive. So he wanted his last check to bounce. And he ended up living in a 2-bedroom apartment, rented apartment in San Francisco, and he died last Monday. He gave away $9 billion. And if you talk to Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or any of these people, they will tell you that he was their inspiration for the Giving While Living pledge. And he believed, like Dale Carnegie said, that the day would come when it would be considered a disgrace for a man to die with great wealth. That when you had it, you should do something with it. So I've always really liked this comic strip. But what's interesting about it, and he believed, as I do, that the problem we have is us. We're the problem. We got to get out of our own way. And if we can get it, I mean, it's always interesting, whenever I'm called in, I consult with somebody and a leader. They'll talk to me, they'll say, Pádraig, it's really great to have you in here. You got this team. We really got to fix these guys. And my answer is usually the same, yeah, I can't wait to work with them. But before I do you mind if I ask you a few questions? So think about this. We have seen the enemy, and he is us. So 4 things to know. Can we change our reality? Who's in charge of our lives? Why is it so hard to change? And how can we change? So let's start with the first one, and let's just look at this. Who here wants to volunteer and give me a definition of reality? Yeah, it's okay. You don't need to stand up. It's okay, guys. Reality is an interesting one. There are lots of schools of thought on reality. This thing of objective reality. A tree is a tree. Whether I look at it, whether you look at it, it's a tree. There's the other one, the subjective reality. Well, actually, that's not really true. I look at the tree and you see one person there sees a tree and thinks, another person sees an apple and another person sees money. So we look at the tree and we sort of see the tree differently with a subjective view. The reality, in fact, is sort of something that we create ourselves. There are other schools of thought about reality. Here's one, that we construct our own reality through our cognitive processes. Here's one, sophilism. The only thing that exists is your own mind. Everything else is a figment of your imagination. Here's the Matrix. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Matrix movie. This notion that we're living in a matrix, some simulation created by higher beings. And here we have multiverse, this multiverse theory. This notion that there's many, many universes going on out there, many, many different realities. Now, I don't know which one gets your vote. I'm sort of up for subjective reality myself. But the point is, they're all very far removed from our notion of reality. I mean, what do these things mean? It sounds like waffle, doesn't it? But I think there's one takeaway. When we look at all these things, there's one takeaway that we can all agree. When we all experience reality, we all experience it differently. Like no two people have the same experience of reality. And so it begs the question, what is real? I mean, things are real or they're not, right? Well, maybe. And, you know, reality, I'm saying here, is in our minds. So that's where it resides. It resides between our ears. But this is really good news. Because if we can change what's going on between our ears, if we can change our minds, we can change our reality. And I'm not talking about some sort of thing up there in the ether floating around. I'm talking literally your physical reality. You can change your life by changing the way you think, by changing what's going on between your ears. We've seen the enemy, and he is us. It's going on in here. And this is the work, I believe, that we have to do. It's interesting, there's a John Maynard Keynes, very famous economist, and this phrase is a statement is attributed to him. I'm not even sure if he ever said it, but maybe it's just one of these urban myth things. But he said, when the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir? Well, maybe he was wrong. Maybe it's when you change your mind, the facts change. That you change your thinking and the reality and the facts change for you. Here's an interesting, I don't know if any of you do any visioning. Visioning is a really interesting thing. What is visioning? What's going on when somebody starts doing a visioning exercise? Here's a board, a group of friends getting together. We won't quit until we get fit. Like, it's really sort of interesting. You know, you straight away you admire them, don't you? You can see them all there together saying, yeah, we're going to do it, whatever. What are they doing? What's an athlete doing before a competition? Or any one of us, we're going out for a run, or we're going to climb a mountain, or we're going to do whatever we're going to do, and we start thinking about it, and we imagine ourselves, well, we're going to run a race. I'm a runner, a distance runner. You know, I go out and I imagine the race, I imagine me running the race, I imagine me finishing the race. I rarely imagine me winning the race. I've got to be honest here. Those days are long over. But I can still imagine myself coming across the line without collapsing over the line. And what I'm doing is I'm changing my thinking. I'm changing what's going on between my ears. I'm building a sense of confidence, a sense of belief in myself. It doesn't guarantee I'm going to get over the line, but it sure as hell improves my chances. So think about these notions of these simple things of reality. And I suppose the important thing for me in the whole visioning thing is the mind doesn't know the difference between what you imagine and what is real. It doesn't know the difference. There's no difference. The silver bullet, the magic bullet. Who here would like to develop their thinking, like to develop their reality, like to work in a way where they have their own magic bullet, where they can literally, I'm not talking about figuratively, metaphorically, or any other way. They can literally transform their lives by changing the way they think, by changing their own reality. And that's really what I want to talk about today. Now, I said we would look at things to know. Can we change our reality? Well, yes, if we can change our minds. And my second one was, who's in charge? So here's a model that you may or may not be familiar with called the Locus of Control. And it's a very, very simple model. It's based on, what was the guy's name? Bear with me, I look at my notes here. The guy's name was Julian Rother, back in the 1960s. And he carried out a piece of research here in the States. And he was looking to understand, it was a big piece of research, how one's attitudes and behaviors impacted you in the long term, your long-term success. And by the way, when I talk about success and these kind of things, always remember, I'll say this a few times today, that life is a marathon. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Forget about the 90 days. You know, I mean, the 90-day goals are important, the 12, but life is a marathon. When you think about success over your lifetime, okay? So just keep this firmly in mind. So the locus of control, they came up with this idea that there's two ways that you can view the world. One way you view the world is, I, Porrick, I, Dale, I, whomever, I am responsible for what's going on in my life. I take full accountability, no matter what's happening. So I go down here to Dale, I go down here, and I come over here and there you go. Clearly he was not in control of that. I mean, he didn't tell me to come down, he didn't expect it either way. You hope we're okay with that. But what he is in control of is what? His reaction, his response, the way he thinks about it, the way he processes it, what he does with his information, the way he explains the world to himself. The way he explains, this is critical. The story you're telling yourself. Now, he knows I went down there to make a point, so he's not going to jump up and punch me back. But the story we tell ourselves, the way we interpret and explain the world is everything. It is everything. It is a foundation stone to everything that you do. Because the degree that you take ownership and responsibility, what happens? You feel powerful. You feel in control. You feel, actually, I can influence my own reality. But the minute you start blaming somebody there, you're responsible. I lose control, I become a victim, and I become powerless, I become helpless. This notion of the locus of control is really, really important. I'm going to give you a simple example. I ride a motorbike. I was talking to a couple of guys over there, that table there, the man with the beard. We were talking earlier about motorbikes. And I ride a BMW GS, 1200 GS. I'm a small guy, I've got a factory lowered one, but a wonderful bike. And I have a certain behavioral profile, you know. And so a good friend of mine, aware of my behavioral profile, gave me the British Police Foundation's guide to safe motorcycle riding. I'd be a bit of a risk taker. And I came across, it's written by a bunch of psychologists, and I came across an amazing statement in it. A motorcyclist who has an accident in the previous 3 years is 3 times more likely to have the exact same accident within the next year. Now, why do you think that might be? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? We're talking about the locus of control. They don't accept that they had any part, that they contributed in any way to the accident. Because they don't believe they contributed, they don't believe they've anything to learn. Because they don't believe they've anything to learn, they don't change their behavior, and they set themselves up for a repeat. So the way you explain things yourself, taking things into yourself is critical. Taking accountability is critical. Can we change our reality? Yes, we change our minds. Who's in charge? We are, or we're powerless. We must take ownership, or we're powerless. The question then is, why is it so hard to change? And I really like this one. This is the theory of consistency. A foolish consistency, and you made the point about being consistent in your introduction there. A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. Anybody know who that guy is? Anybody recognize him? Ralph Waldo Emerson. He's a famous American, albeit from some time ago. And he made this point that in his little statement, but the research shows this. We strive to maintain consistency in our beliefs to the extent that we will filter out. We actually will have like a psychological scotoma. We will not see other things. We literally will not see them. We won't experience them. They won't register in our brains at all. We struggle and we strive to remain consistent in what we believe. And this consistency leads us to real problems. We can't change because we want to remain consistent in our beliefs. We believe certain things and we look for validation, for proof of those things. It's what we believe, Anthony. The challenge is what we believe. We deny it, we ignore it. I mean, I'm not going to talk about American politics, but it is interesting to see how partisan American politics has become in the last 20 years. And I really believe a lot of the challenge that we're faced in these kind of things, in domains like politics, for example, is that we have these belief systems and we literally ignore anything that contradicts them. And so we only see, I mean, social media is the perfect example. You know the way in social media, we're watching social media, and the more we watch, the more myopic, the more filtered, the narrow, the prism through which we see the world, because the algorithms know what we want to watch and they show us more and more of that. The exact same happens naturally in our brains. So, I asked the question, 4 things to know. Can we change reality? Yes, if we change our minds. Who's in charge of our lives? We are or powerless. Why so hard to change? Because we strive to remain consistent in our beliefs. And that brings me to this notion of how to change. And this, I'm sure you're all familiar with this model. It's a long-standing model, see, do, get. Here's the question. Who will accept that the results that we get in our lives are a consequence of the things that we do? Well, I think we all have to accept that if we want to be in control, if we want to be powerful. Otherwise, the locus of control is out there. The results that we get are a consequence of things that other people do. But here's a better question. Who will accept that the things that we do are a consequence of the way that we see the world? We see the world a certain way. We have certain beliefs, so we act a certain way. So we get certain results, which tend to reinforce the belief system that we have. And this is self-reinforcing closed loop. I believe something, Andre believes something else. So he sees things differently, he behaves differently to me, I behave a different way. He gets one result, I get another result. And then he's saying, yeah, I was right, that proves my point. So he's always looking to reinforce and strengthen. I'm always looking to reinforce and strengthen my belief system by seeing only what changes the world. So how to change? Well, actually, it's easy. That's the funny thing. I said earlier that change is really, really hard. It is. But the things that you can do to change are really, really easy. Simple and easy. So I want to talk about them. There's 3 places you can have interventions. You can change the way you think. You can change your habits. You can form new habits. You can behave a different way and create a new loop. And you can notice and reflect on the outcomes of what's actually happening. So let's look and let's talk about these things. So 4 things to know. Can we change our reality? Yes, if we can change our mind. Who's in charge? We are, or we're powerless. Why so hard to change? We strive to remain consistent. And can we change? Yeah. We have to break that closed loop, that see, do, get closed loop. So I want to talk about 4 things to do. Things that you can do that can perhaps help you in this regard. And the first one I want to talk about is this book called The 4 Agreements, written by a guy by the name of Don Miguel Ruiz, a Central American spiritual teacher. But there's nothing spiritual about this. This is like really hard-edged stuff. And he has 4 agreements, and I've been trying to practice these in my life, and I'm telling you, they're simple, but they ain't easy. The first one he comes up with is, be impeccable with the word. Don't lie to yourself or to anybody else. Speak clearly. Don't speak against people. Don't gossip. Just say what you mean. Be impeccable with the word. The second one is, don't take anything personally. Nothing anybody says or does has anything to do with you. It's just a projection of their own reality, their own belief system, the story they're telling themselves, the way they explain things to themselves. That's all it is. The third one is don't make assumptions. And this one is really, really powerful. Find the courage to express what you really require, to tell people what you require, and act in that. And this can be a transformative thing in your life. If you stop making assumptions, stop taking things personally, stop making assumptions, it's quite transformative. And this last one, always do your best. And it's going to change from moment to moment, day to day, week to week. But if you always do your best, you won't look back with regret, self-abuse, recrimination, and so on. How many of us look back and think and say, oh God, you know, if only. I saw my dad dying, saying if only. And I swore that whatever happened to me, I wasn't going to die saying if only. I might be saying something else, but I mean, I wouldn't be saying that. So think about this, the 4 agreements. Be impeccable with the word. Say what you mean. You don't have to say it rudely, you don't have to say it roughly, but be honest with yourself. See things clearly. Getting back to this notion of leaders are clear thinkers. Say things clearly. Be clear on what you're trying to do. Don't take anything personally. Nothing anybody says or does has anything to do with you. It's a projection of their own reality. Don't make assumptions. Don't assume anything. State what you need. State what you want. Be honest and open with people. And always do your best. And if you always do your best, you will not look back with recrimination, regret, and self-abuse. I said 4 things to do, the 4 agreements. Second one, the act of courage, the acts of courage. This book was given to me by John Butler, Ron. So John Butler gave this to me in March 1999. And an absolutely outstanding book. And I want to read, if you bear with me, I just want to read a couple of things to you from the book, because I think it's really, really interesting what he has to say. Okay. Who you are and what you are is precious and priceless. Your life really matters, and you offer the world gifts it's never seen before. You have within you vast potential and unique talents which the world yearns for. It yearns for that expression. And it will give you everything that you need in life if you can use them. You've great power to exert as leaders, as individuals. Just been leading yourselves, you've great power to exert in influencing others. Because leadership is what? It's who you are. It's not what you do, it's who you are. It's an internal thing. When you change, as we said, the world changes around you. You make a difference by realizing that you are the difference. And it puts you on a pathway that is really, really interesting, a pathway to giving the world what it needs and fulfilling your greatest dreams. Now, he came up with his 7 acts. And I really, really like these. So visioning, the courage to dream and to share the dream, to actually have a vision, to see something and share it. To see current reality, getting back to seeing things as they are, seeing things clearly, to see current reality, to somehow or other break that closed loop, to see things as they really are, break that loop of consistency. To confront, the willingness to confront, to have the courage to actually confront, i.e. to challenge other people's beliefs. To be confronted, to have your own beliefs challenged and be willing to have them challenged. To learn and grow, which sort of comes from the others. To be vulnerable, to be willing to put yourself out there, knowing that your beliefs may be wrong, that they will be challenged, and that you'll have to change your beliefs, to have that vulnerability. And then, of course, nothing happens until something happens. The courage to actually act, to try and go out there and do something, to move the needle, I suppose, and move things forward. And that brings me to something from the Complete Leader. The 5 leadership competencies, which I find really, really interesting because I believe accountability is the beginning. In the Complete Leader, they talk about these key leadership competencies. The first one is personal accountability, which we've been talking about at some length now. The willingness to take responsibility. If you leave with one thing from my talk, just one idea, one thing, is I've seen the aim, it is us. I am responsible, me, nobody else. There's nobody to blame, not my mum, my dad, society, the president, not my kids, not my boss, not my co-workers. Nobody. I'm fully responsible. Personal accountability is the key. And it's the key to actually, and when I say personal accountability, I mean personal accountability for actually delivering something, for actually making something happen, for taking ownership of what's going on and delivering something. The second one is self-management. I've reorganized these, Ron, I apologize. I'm doing it my own way. The second one is self-management. And self-management sort of comes from personal accountability. And so once you're personally accountable and you take responsibility of what's going on, then you can actually talk about self-management. How am I going to manage myself? And EQ here is critical. Development of your EQ, building and strengthening. EQ is a learned skill, guys. EQ is a learned skill. You learn these things. So developing your EQ, learning how to do it is critical for self-management. And remember, any of you who haven't watched what's the name, Goldman talking to Google, 2007, Google it. Google Goldman talking to Google about EQ and the difference between EQ and IQ and how in leadership, EQ is a differentiating factor. Not IQ, it's EQ. Your ability to work effectively with other human beings is a differentiating factor because there's a floor in IQ. You wouldn't be here if you weren't smart. You're here because you're smart. So being smart isn't going to help you in this room. What's going to help you is your ability to work effectively with other people. That's the differentiating factor. So self-management to me, critical. The next one, and I like this one, again, the complete leader in their 5 top leadership competencies. They talk about goal achievement, not goal orientation, by the way. Goal achievement, they differentiate. A lot of people talk about competency goal orientation as a competency. They talk about goal achievement, the ability to set and achieve, deliver the results that are required. Interpersonal skills, well, what have we been talking about? I mean, the ability to work effectively with a wide range of people, different personality types, different levels, different kinds of people from different backgrounds, and to make a connection with them, to connect effectively with other human beings. And then finally, persuasion. Because if you can't persuade people to follow your dream, to follow your vision, to buy into what you believe, it's very hard to lead. It's very hard to lead if you're just one person. You can lead yourself, but theoretically you want some followers. So this idea of persuasion. So they're the 5 leadership concepts. So we looked at some interesting things. We looked at the 4 agreements. So these are tricks or tools. It's the best way to do it. It's a model. Here's a model to help me take ownership, take accountability, and develop as a leader. The 4 agreements. Be impeccable with the word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. Or the 7 acts of courage from Dusty Staub. Or the 5 competencies from the complete leader. So 4 things to do. And I want to talk about the last one. And the last one's a little bit different. The last one is really talking about some stuff that I do and that I've worked with that you might find interesting, you might find helpful. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. They work for me. That's really all I can say. So remember the see, do, get model. And remember the motorcycle accidents. Keep these in mind as you look at this. So the first thing is we have to notice what happens. So in see, do, get, we say see, do, get. And 3 points of intervention will change your thinking, form new habits, and notice what happens. So journaling, I journal every day. I journal this morning. I did my morning thoughts. I'll do my daily logs. I go through the day. I'll journal the day. And so I notice what's happening. You know, did this talk go well? Did I do a good job? Was I properly prepared? What can I learn? I'll be journaling as the day goes through. I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. And again, at a personal level, I just want to share this with you. Of all the things that I've done in my life that have helped me, the gratitude principle is the number 1. And I say every day, 10 times a day, I'm so grateful for Ron Price and like the wonderful man that he is and the people he's introduced me to. Like so grateful. I'm grateful for Nicole and all the people who've worked hard to put this together. I'm grateful for Roger that I had this wonderful conversation on the plane with. I'm grateful for, where's Andre, for this bottle of wine and, sorry Nicole, this bottle of wine, this baguette and cheese we ate last night, the word's supposed to. And so on and so forth. I'm grateful and I practice this all the time, gratitude. It transforms the way you see the world. It transforms the way you see people interact with them. 3 things I believe, I write down 3 things I believe. Like I believe I'm a co-creative force in the universe. Like that I'm an instrument, a co-creative force. I work with the universe to create. I really believe that to my tone as I write that down every day. 3 things I do to make my day great. One of them today was I would come here and I would deliver as best I could with humility and love. and I wouldn't think about myself. I wouldn't worry about my anxiety and feeling anxious that we talked about. I wouldn't be feeling anxious. I would interpret it as excitement, and I'm come and do my level best here today. For ye, not for me. And if I could get myself out of my own way, I might do a good job. So 3 things to do make my day great. And then mensana corpore sano, a sane mind and a healthy body. Meditation to build present moments awareness. And meditation doesn't have to be some big rigmarole. It can be a very simple process of stopping, pausing, letting everything go, coming into the present moment, finishing what you're doing, putting it away, and then refocusing on the next thing. They say in this, I was studying philosophy for years, they said in the School of Philosophy, the only act of will is the act of paying attention. What you attend to and how you attend defines your whole life. So mensana corpore sano, meditation, exercise. Exercise, it's great to exercise, get lean and mean and get fit and healthy. It's all wonderful. But what's really interesting about exercise, it changes the chemistry of your body, and it changes your ability to take that locus of control into yourself. It changes your ability to actually deal with problems, to deal with stress. The same with diet. I mean, sugar. Sugar is the killer. I mean, sugar is the drug of the last 50 years. It's killing us. And so diet, what we eat, exercising changes your body chemistry and allows you to see things clearly. And relationships. I just want to make one quick comment on this. In all longitudinal studies on longevity, and when I mean longevity, I just don't mean that you live a long time. I mean you live a long time and you can function while you're alive. All the studies identify key things. Adequate means. You have to have adequate means. You have to put a roof over your head and food on the table. It's really hard to have a good, to live a long, healthy, prosperous life if you're struggling to make ends meet and put food on the table. Big issue. The second one of these is a sense of purpose. Having something that you want to do. There's something left to do. You're not finished. You haven't wrapped up with life and wondering what am I going to do. You actually have something you want to do. It can be the grandkids, by the way. But I mean, there's something left to do. The next one is I'm surrounded by loving relationships. And the word surround is important. They're not relationships that are 1,000 miles away. They're actively involved in my life. I'm actively involved in their life. So for me, relationships is a really, really big one. Now, we have met the enemy and he is us. So I'm about to conclude, and I want to just flick through my notes here because I actually want to read some stuff to you that to me is like just world-class stuff. Now bear with me. Okay, here we go. So I said, who's in charge? Okay, can we change reality, number one? Well, the answer is yes, we can change reality. How? We just change the way we think. We can change our absolute reality. The second one was, who's in charge of our lives? And we are. Because if we're not, we've no control. We have to take the locus of control into ourselves, become fully accountable so that we can actually have the life that we want to live. And I actually would make a promise to everybody in the room that anybody who takes full responsibility for what's going on, their life will just change, literally. Right in front of their eyes, their life will just change. And they will not believe how much it can change, how different it can be by them taking ownership for what's going on. Albeit that they're not responsible for what's going on, but they take ownership of it. Why is it so hard to change? Well, because we try to remain consistent. We ignore the things that don't support our belief system. And how can we change? We break the closed loop. The seed to get closed loop. I said the 4 agreements, the acts of courage, the competencies, the 5 leadership competencies, and the Keystone habits. So here we go. Paul declared, we have met the enemy and he is us. The quote suggests that we need to get out of our own way, change the way we see and explain what's happening in the world, what's happening around us, change our minds, do things differently, form new habits, get different results, notice what happens, and get that loop spinning, a whole new loop going differently. Rather than blaming external forces and things and people for our problems and challenges, we recognize our own contribution. Remember the motorcycle accident? We recognize our own contribution. We take ownership of that, and it allows us to become personally accountable. Here's a quotation I'm going to close with from James Allen's book, a 1902 book, As a Man Thinketh. Mind is the master power that molds and makes, and man is mind, and evermore he takes, the tool of thought,
and shaping what he wills, brings forth 1,000 goods, 1,000 ills. He thinks in secret, and it comes to pass. Environment is but his looking glass. If you want to change your lives, change your minds, change your thinking. Thank you.